Parshas Chukas gets its name from the words Zos Chukas HaTorah. It is with these three words that the Torah introduces this very enigmatic sugya of para aduma, the red heifer which is metame tahorim, while at the same time somehow metaher the tameim. One of the famous questions here is why this would be called Chukas HaTorah, the chok of Torah. Aren't there, after all, many chukim of Torah? I think we should spend a few minutes discussing the distinction between chukim and mishpatim in order to reach the answer to that question. Chazal make their famous distinction in Maseches Yoma Daf Samech Zayin Amud Bet, where they say that mishpatim are those mitzvos which ilmalei nichtavu dinhu sheyikatvu. Had they not been written and enacted into law in the Torah, nations should have figured out that it was a just thing, dinhu sheyikatvu, that these things should have been enacted. In other words, their benefit, the sense that they make is intuitive. Chukim, on the other hand, are mitzvos which dvarim shehasatan meshiv alehen, that the Satan sort of whispers into our ears all the reasons in the world why it's not kedai to bother with them. Milashon chok chakakti lecha, right? Hashem says, I engraved this into law. Chukim, chok. I engraved it into law, that's why you do it. Not that it makes intuitive sense to you, not that the benefit is intuitively understandable. And para aduma is brought as one of the prime examples of chukim. Now, knowing this distinction, when it comes to the study of Tamei HaMitzvos, one can understand that one of these subgroups, the Chukim, are a lot more interesting and a lot more challenging than the Mishpatim. After all, deciphering a Ta'am for Ritzicha or a Ta'am for Gezela doesn't exactly compare to finding a Ta'am for Shatnez or Basar B'Chala, for example. Now, specifically in the context of Tamei HaMitzvos, the Para Aduma emerges as the Chok of all Chukim. That even those like Shlomo HaMelech who were able to find ta'amim, as Chazal tell us, Shlomo HaMelech was able to find ta'amim for all of the mitzvos in the Torah except for para aduma. Finding ta'amim for all is possible, not for para aduma. Only Moshe Rabbeinu with his Memtet Sha'arei Bina was able to get a glimpse into the ta'am for the mitzvah of para aduma. This is exactly what many of the Meforshim answer as to why para aduma would be specifically called Chukas HaTorah, the chok of the Torah. Because specifically when it comes to para aduma, we know that the reason that we are following it is that it's chok chakakti lecha. It is the chok. We follow it because Hashem engraved it into law, not because we see any other sense about it or benefit from it. In closing, what I would like to suggest is perhaps when we reach Parshas Chukas each year, when we read about the para aduma, we can pause and remember that the bottom line is that when we follow any of the mitzvahs of the Torah, whether the ones that we think we understand or the ones that we don't think that we understand, really the reason that we're following those mitzvahs is that they are Ritzon Hashem. And that ought to be enough of a reason that any of us ought to need.